We're standing on the edge of a precipice, boys. It's the end. The end of the 2010s. The dawn of a new decade is right over the horizon. I'm Matisse Van Rossum, and I'm ready to just jump.
I'm Ben, and I can't really tell you any of the trends of the 2010s. I feel like there weren't really any.
I could say for the last decade it was like transition lenses, but I think if I had to summarize like the early aughts,
What's
like,
the transition lenses of the 2010s?
what is the transition lenses of the 2010s?
The floss dance.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's it.
You're right. Fortnite dancing is the thing. Yeah.
That's
Or
what
the dab.
Yeah, I don't know what the fashion is, but yeah, like definitely Fortnite dances. And,
Well,
and dabbing
we're here and we're getting ready to floss our way into 2020.
Oh, and of course I'm Cleveland Mosier and Tease. I'm leaping over that precipice with you, and you're damn right I am not bringing a parachute.
If the end is nigh, I don't think I want to survive.
Oh yeah.
It's that time of year again, folks. The time where we look back on everything we've learned and seen and experienced this year. But since it's also not just the end of a year, but the end of a decade, we're going to be diving a little bit into some of our favorite and least favorite films of the 2010s. So yes, this is the first of a two-part episode, and in this episode, we will be first discussing our top 5 films of 2019.
We covered 61 movies this year.
Wow.
I saw. And out of those, 19 of them were new movies. So we have been keeping up to date this year, boys.
This is probably the best we've done of keeping current so far.
Yeah, definitely.
This is just in general, not even regard to horror movies, the most current I think I've ever been in my life.
We definitely pulled you out from under your stone.
You've been doing it. You've been doing it. I mean, the sunlight is a little glaring on my goblin eyes, but I'm starting to get used to it.
You know, you learn to live by night.
True. That's when I come out of my cave.
There's a world of color to be seen.
All right, well, what's first, Ben?
Okay, so we'll start with the top 5 of 2019.
Just get right into
and
it.
just jump right into it. So
This time we're just like the cliff. We're leaping.
at number 5 for me was a movie that came up and surprised me. A movie that I didn't really have much expectations going into, and was really pleasantly surprised and ended up really loving it. It's a little movie called Ready or Not.
That's also my number 5,
Okay,
so I'll
great.
just wrap it in
Yeah,
there with
yeah.
you.
This was a very, very fun movie. A lot funnier than I was expecting. Samara Weaving's performance in particular is really standout in it.
I agree. I was very pleasantly surprised with this movie. Just like you, I think we all went in with extremely low expectations for Ready or Not. The trailers did not quite do it justice. And man, it is so fun, so well done, so well acted. Yeah, it's my number 5 as well. Probably the dark horse of the year for me.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the most fun experiences I had at the theater this year.
Years,
Yes.
I think, for
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely.
When it comes to having like fun watching a movie, like, well, I mean, John Wick was pretty great too. If we're comparing like fun moments in cinema,
Yeah.
but Ready or Not.
No,
was
I
such a
agree.
great movie.
It was right up there with John Wick 3 for me for most fun experiences. And like, it does something that you don't see too often in horror movies, where it does both the horror and the levity extremely well. Has a fantastic balance of both. Great sense of dramatic irony. And yeah, just a really fantastic fun
It's
film.
the perfect combination of You're Next and Clue that I never knew I wanted.
Exactly.
Yes.
I would be very curious to see more from the makers of Ready or Not, because I think there's a lot of good shit there.
Well, speaking of balancing horror and levity, my number 5 is also surprised me. Chapter 2.
Oh, nice.
Like,
Nice.
it made it that high up. I loathed the first one when I watched
Well,
it.
yeah, you hadn't
I
seen
hated
it
it.
before, and
Yeah.
you really didn't like
Yeah,
it.
I railed it. And I went in with the lowest expectations for it, Chapter 2. Y'all practically dragged me to go see it. And I loved it. I thought it was a blast, and it was surprisingly faithful. This applies more to my decade list, but I tried to kind of sit down and ask myself, like, how I'm rating these films, and I decided to go by like rewatchability, like how much would I want to go back and watch a film again?
Sure.
And that's the lowest aspect of rating for me, because in horror, some of my favorite films are films I never want to see ever again, because they're so harrowing. Like, and I don't want to do that to myself on a regular basis, as effective as that film might be. So, but I rated on that, and then just like its singular like best moments, you know, like what really stands out about that film to me. So anyway, yeah, and at chapter 2, like the funhouse scene, like popping through the door, the fireflies under the bleachers, there are just some spectacular moments in that movie, and the actors just really like rocked the performance for it. So it's number 5 for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, chapter 2 as well. It didn't make it as high as number 5 for me, but it was definitely in my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really solid choice.
Like you said, does a really good job of balancing the comedy and the horror. I was really impressed with how well the adult actors channeled the children that they were, you know, supposed to be portraying. And like, man, the big climax at the end with Clown Spider, it's totally off the wall and goofy and fun. And yeah, I had a really good time in that one, so that's a good choice.
There is the one, like, I do have a one big asterisk on that film, is I do still see it as reprehensible that Mike was tokenified.
Sure.
Like, and I think that does need to be like just kind of like just snuck in there. Like,
we talked more about that in
Yeah.
our It episode, so feel free to go back and listen to those if you haven't.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. I did want to mention, I think every single one of my choices here has been talked about it on an episode at length.
Oh yeah.
Mine too.
All 10 of mine.
Or at least
So-
my best of.
So any of these that we're talking about, we've done at some point. You can go back through our backlog and check it out. Ben, what is your number 4?
My number 4, this, as we all know, is the year of the sophomore release for
sophomore bump.
horror
Cleveland
directors.
coined
Yeah.
it, yeah.
There's no better example of the sophomore bump than a little film called Us. I thought this movie was a ton of fun. It's a movie I feel like I still need to rewatch, kind of see how it sticks with me a little bit more. But I think it's a really incredible movie. All the performances are great. Really, really unique vision, too.
All right. Also a very good choice. My number 4 is one that we have talked about very recently on the show. My number 4 is Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale, on the subject of harrowing films that I don't want to rewatch anytime soon, but definitely left quite an impact. The Nightingale is that. I won't rehash too much of it since we literally just talked about it pretty recently, but man, what a fucking killer film. Great performances, and some of the most uncomfortable cinema moments I've experienced, not just in 2019 but in general.
Speaking of, I want to note that, you know, it's November 24th at the time of recording this podcast. A lot of these films are still extremely fresh in my mind. This list is very newly made. I think as time passes and I have just more time to steep and think on these films, my choices will likely change.
Stuff shifts.
Yeah, a good deal, even,
I keep
I would
a
think.
ranked list on Letterboxd of every year. I've done it since 2014, and I go back and I look at them sometimes, and sometimes I shift things around.
Yeah.
Like, man, I really loved this film at the time, but it didn't really stick with me, and this other film is actually better. So, you know, I think it's opinions change, and art ages just like wine. So, you know, some ages better than others. Some is really great right when it comes out, right when it's new, but over time, you never know.
Yeah. One of the key reasons I brought that up is that was actually in a pretty good deal of contest with me for It Chapter 2 and The Nightingale, and there's such difficult choices to pick from, and I had to go with...
Very, very different films.
And if I was going to
seriously.
choose to go back and watch a film again, I'd probably go back and watch It Chapter 2 first. Not because it's a better film, but because I couldn't handle
it's more
watching it again.
digestible.
But I will say, I do think The Nightingale is a better film. You know, again, the list is very subject to change, so I wouldn't put that there. But my number 4 is Ready or Not. That's where it goes for me. I adored it when it comes to best moments. The end of the film, which I don't want to accidentally spoil, is excellent. Like one of my favorite moments in cinema of the year. It's such a wonderful take on the most dangerous game, and it feels as the aesthetic of a murder mystery, and it's all very eclectic and comedic, and all the jokes land. Ditto everything you've said. It's delightful. Go see it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Ben, number 3.
Okay, so my number 3 was a little film by that sick fuck, Gaspar Noé, none other than Climax. The dance sequences were stunning, and I'm usually not the biggest dance person. Like, I know you loved Suspiria partially because of the dance. But
I'm not a big dance person either. I just thought that Suspiria did it well.
I think it hit that area for me with Climax because the dance really went into the story in a really unique way. This dance troupe being drugged with LSD without their knowledge is so horrifying, and Gaspar Noé does such a great job of bringing you into the environment, and it's one of the most immersive movies I've seen this year. Really incredible stuff. I would definitely recommend going out and seeing it.
Yeah, Climax made my top 10. Climax is actually I had it in my 6th spot, so just outside of our top 5. But man, similarly harrowing to The Nightingale, but in a very different way. Yeah, definitely check out Climax and go back and listen to our episode on that.
The reason it's not on my list is simply because I haven't seen it yet. So
we'll try to change that
subject
soon.
to change.
I'll just go ahead and say that my top 3 are all sophomore bump films, or I guess my top 4 if we're talking if we're talking The Nightingale. So my 3rd place is The Lighthouse by Robert Eggers. We talked about that one fairly recently too. Man, what an incredible fucking film. Saw it twice in the theaters. Go listen to our episode on The Lighthouse. It is just continuing Robert Eggers' legacy of being like the guy to do period pieces at this point, and absolutely incredible performances from Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, watching them go crazy and destroy each other and themselves is it's just a wild ride. It's totally engrossing.
I think from here on out we can pretty confidently say that the rest of the films on our list all got 5 out of 5s. Like for the year from us.
Yeah.
Confidently.
Yes.
Like this, we're going to say it again and again, but this year, good Lord.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. My number 3 is Us. That's where it's going for me. I adored that film, and I'm already very keen to watch it again and share it with more people. It's a delight, and when it comes to key moments in films, nothing speaks to me like that scissor fight scene. It's so good.
Bum.
Like, oh man, it just gives me like all the happy like goosebumps. And the glass house when I think it's
Fuck the Police.
when Fuck the Police
Yeah.
comes on, like, man, what a great movie. What an absolute fucking delight.
Number 2 for me is Midsommar.
Same.
Really engrossing pagan horror.
There's not enough pagan horror.
It's one of the best breakup movies out there. I found it surprisingly funny a lot of times too. Funnier than I was definitely expecting, especially coming out of Hereditary. Ari Aster kills it yet again.
My number 2 is Us. That's why I didn't say anything when you mentioned it earlier, Ben. Won't rehash too much of what you said, but I only got the chance to see it the once. I'm aching for a rewatch because I feel like there's so much stuff to unpack in that movie, just like in Get Out. And like Get Out just grew more and more on me like every time I saw it, and I feel like Us is the same. I'm very overdue for a rewatch, but man, like you said, that scissor fight scene at the end and just like the twists and turns that it takes, and Lupita Nyong'o's performance, like 5 out of fucking 5 across everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any year, any of these would be at the top of the list. So yeah, like I said,
choosing
Midsommar.
between these top 3 was difficult.
And you know, for Midsommar, I think when it comes to key moments, speaking of leaps, right? I'll leave it at that. But wow, harrowing.
Absolutely. And the soundtrack is great.
Exactly.
Yeah, the score is fantastic.
Paxton Cloak just killed it, and just so much good traditional
Ari
music.
Aster
And the
is-
art is
Ari Aster
incredible.
is on a roll with getting people to score his movies, like having Colin Stetson do Hereditary and the Hacks and Cloak do Midsummer. I'm holding out for his next film to be scored by Lingua Ignota. That's what I want.
That would be awesome.
What's your number one, Ben? I think you probably
Well,
know.
yeah, it's The Lighthouse.
Same.
It's The
Yeah.
Lighthouse. It's such a perfect movie. Nothing like seeing two of your favorite actors get shit-faced and sing sea shanties in a lighthouse. I think this movie will definitely stand the test of time. I have seen it a couple times at this point. I feel fairly confident saying that even though I absolutely love The Witch, I think I prefer The Lighthouse. It's my favorite of the year and one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get more into that conversation when we get into the decade as well. It will certainly come up again because I'm extremely torn on which one I prefer. Have I to choose? They're masterworks equally. The Lighthouse is absolutely my number one pick as well. Sorry to spill my beans on that, but the cinematography is just out of this world. The cursing sequence is just so vividly ingrained in my mind. Comparing it and The Witch, it's extremely difficult. It's an extremely difficult choice to make. I think that they're both masterclass films. I've seen The Witch like 5 times, and I've only seen The Lighthouse the once, so I'll definitely be needing to rewatch it many more times to more confidently say which one I like more. But as for this year, it's my favorite. And it and Midsummer were neck and neck. And I'm talking like not even just best of the year, but best of the decade, trying to compete with each other. It's extremely difficult to choose.
Well, like I said, I had a very, very difficult time choosing the arrangement of my top 3 because they are all like really, really neck and neck. And I just had to bring it down to which one gave me the most memorable viewing experience. That was the only way that I could rank them. And so it's probably no surprise that my number one is Midsummer. I ended up seeing a grand total of 3 times in the theaters, twice the theatrical version, and the third time when we all went to see the director's cut. It is a just absolutely stunning film, maybe one of the best examples of daylight horror that I've ever seen. More of that, more pagan horror. Give me more Wicker Man stuff. Like, we haven't talked about the Wicker Man on this podcast yet, but Midsummer gave me those same kind of vibes, and I love the Wicker Man. It's a hard choice, but Midsummer number one, baby.
Yeah, just stunning, vivid cinematography.
Oh my god, so incredible. And yeah, I didn't even realize until just now when I was talking about it that like 4 of my top 5 are all sophomore bump films.
Yep.
Like, holy shit, you guys.
That expectation has of the sophomore slump has just been dashed on the rocks for me.
So between all of us, we had 4 out of 5 of the films the same, right?
Yeah, I think so. Ready or Not, Us, Midsummer, and The Lighthouse.
And then I had The Nightingale, you had Climax, and you had it Chapter 2.
And I'd be willing to bet, like, considering how much y'all equally love Climax, that it might have.
Yeah.
It's a very colorful film, isn't it?
Extremely.
Yes.
I like those, so yeah, that could very well have usurped.
Yeah, it's been a solid year, and I think the fact that we had 4 of the same on all of our list really shows how great those 4 films are.
It's a bit. It might be seen as a bit circle jerky, but I think more so it speaks to the testament of those 4 films.
Yeah, I mean, I need to rephrase again. Like, these are all-time films.
Yeah, like these directors are setting the bar extremely, extremely high.
Yeah, we're moving into a golden age.
I'm more confident than ever that like Jordan Peele and Ari Aster and Robert Eggers are like the new like John Carpenter and
Hitchcock even.
and Hitchcock and
Jordan
Toby Hooper.
Peele's work is very Hitchcock-esque. He's got a huge backlog to contend with.
Like
but,
these are the new horror auteurs, and maybe they'll get tired eventually, but I have no reason to think that they're gonna stop making incredible films anytime soon.
Yeah, and any of those films, like, you can be comparable to like some of the great like 70s and 80s horror directors, but
Absolutely.
The thing is, like, all of them are standing on the shoulders of those giants, but they very, very well bring their own style to the table, and that can be said for all of them.
Agreed. Shall we move into honorable mentions?
Yeah, let's just cover a few of the ones that didn't make our list, but still are worth a shout out. Okay, so a few films that didn't quite make my list. The Nightingale, which we talked about at length very recently. Child's Play, which is another movie that took me by surprise and really impressed me. Under the Silver Lake, if you count it. An amazing throwback to noir and bizarre.
If you count it as horror,
if we're counting that one usurps Ready or Not in my 5th place. But
it's debatable.
It's debatable, which is why I didn't put it in there. But yeah, if we're talking about like great films, Under the Silver Lake is as like a suspense thriller, comedy thriller, really, really very good.
It Chapter 2, Velvet Buzzsaw.
That's on my list.
Which came early in the year, was very fun. One last movie I wanted to quickly shout out is a borderline horror movie. It's a documentary on African American and Black horror called Horror Noir.
I've heard that that's
it's a Shudder exclusive, and it's really excellent stuff. I would really recommend seeking it out if you haven't seen it.
Yes, please. I would love to see it. I've heard very good things. So, like I mentioned, both It Chapter 2 and Climax made it into my top 10 of the year, so definitely honorable mentions for those. Child's Play there as well, one that I was not expecting much from, and got quite a lot of enjoyment out of. I think it's a worthy successor to the franchise, giving it sort of a new, more modern twist, but still capturing the same ethos of the original. I also want to shout out Happy Death Day to You. That one just barely squeaked into my top 10, but I thought that was a very fun sci-fi horror nonsense journey that made me laugh quite a bit. And also Dr. Sleep. No, you guys didn't like Dr. Sleep very much, but I thought it was great, and so I definitely wanted to throw that one out there as well. Velvet Buzzsaw is one that didn't make it into my top 10, but I thought was at least refreshing and original enough that it's worth watching.
It's fun.
It's different. And that is something that is woefully absent from a lot of horror films, something different and original, and Velvet Buzzsaw is definitely that, so I think it's worthy of a shout out for that reason. Cleve, what about you?
Right, so it's funny, before the podcast we were talking about whether we wanted to do a top 10 or top 5 of the year, and my vote went in for top 5 because there was no way I thought I'd seen like enough films, and I actually ended up making a list of 11.
Nice.
So I'll just go from 11 and just quickly rapid fire down to my number 6, which is Nightingale, as I've already said. Number 11 is Crawl. It's a fun movie. I figured I'd throw in an honorable mention for it.
Enjoyable
it's a nice monster movie.
Yeah.
I like those. More of those are fun. And then number 10, which is very important for me to mention on the list, is Dr. Sleep. There were several things I really didn't like about that movie, but there were several things I really liked. And the more I've had time to think about it after the podcast, the more I stand by the things that I liked. I still want to give it a shout out.
Right on.
And a shout out to Mike Flanagan and just say, like, no, it's very worth seeing. Go check it out. And just, the flaws are hard, but I'm glad that we are doing some honorable mentions because I did want to throw that in there. Next is Velvet Buzzsaw. Enough's already been said on that. After that, at 8 is Happy Death Day. I adored that movie, and I would highly recommend it. Super fun, both of them, and also went in with super low expectations. And I just loved how, like, Back to the Future-y it was with its logic, and just super fun. And then number 7, I'm surprised I didn't hear, was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Also, some very cool moments in it. The Red Room has stuck with me more than I thought it would. I don't think I rated it super, super highly. I might have given it like a 3 or a 4. I don't completely remember. The monsters are rad.
The creatures are super fun.
And if that's your jam, like, it's it's worth it for
If
that.
if I had made a top 15, Scary Stories would have crept in there, but didn't do enough for me to get past the other honorable mentions that I had. But overall, this was a decent to great year for horror.
Oh, I definitely agree.
There's
I think
a
decent's an
lot.
understatement.
Yeah.
I've just been overwhelmed.
Yeah. Let's stay positive for a couple more minutes before we go negative here.
Sure.
Let's quickly just mention what movie had the best score of the year. For me, it was Midsommar.
Same.
That Hacks and Cloak score is really incredible.
The tricky part for me is when score meets sound design. If we're talking about instrumental scores, I think
We
that-
can include soundtrack
Midsommar.
in that as well.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah.
The Lighthouse, the repetition, like
I mean, The
really
Lighthouse's
gets me.
score is
Yeah,
great.
The
as
Lighthouse's
well.
score is awesome.
And
Definitely honorable mention when it comes to
Musically,
score.
I love me a sea shanty, so from like a personal perspective, it's there. But
Yeah.
I think when it comes to like instrumental scoring, I would say Midsummer's at the top.
Yeah, well, and if we're talking soundtracks, Us has a fantastic
Yes.
soundtrack, and Climax also has an
Yes.
incredible soundtrack.
Do you know who did Climax's soundtrack?
It's like a continuous DJ mix, essentially.
Oh, rad.
Yeah.
So there's in the opening credits they have a whole list of all the DJs who supplied music. So it's a lot. Yeah, Climax is definitely a soundtrack more than a score. but
Yeah.
Climax has a
that.
great one. It's all just like Euro techno dance music.
Get some Aphex Twin in there.
yeah, there's some Aphex Twin.
Daft Punk.
I'll definitely throw in a shout out to that weird moment in It Chapter 2, like
The
with
weird needle drop.
the
yeah.
weird needle drop. But the more I
was
look
pretty
back at
funny.
it, the more I like that sequence. Like it threw me off, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it when it happened. I loved it. Like it's great.
It's so
it's such a
baffling
ballsy
that
move.
I can't help to laugh at it
Yeah.
every time I think of it. Okay, going off of that, let's talk about best cinematography. I think the two
This is
obvious
really hard.
choices
This is really hard.
for me are Midsommar and The Lighthouse. Which one edges which out is tough. The Lighthouse is technically really impressive because they shot on old cameras with old lenses as well. Midsommar is equally as impressive, harkening back to those tritone Technicolor strips as inspiration, shooting all in the daytime. Technically, that's incredibly difficult and really impressive. Those are my two standouts personally.
I would say that Midsommar, Us, and The Lighthouse all have notable cinematography. Like, they're all extremely well shot and just beautiful to look at. I think for my favorite cinematography, I think I'm actually going to say Climax.
That's a great choice
think
too, yeah.
Just because how much of it is very extended takes, like
The whole second half of the movie is one take essentially.
right, and just like how well they lit that whole space and the camera stuff that they do with it, and even like the dance sequence at the beginning, like where it's just like the static camera directly over all of the dancers as each one comes in and does their own thing for a couple of minutes. Climax has some really, really powerful cinematography, and I think that while I loved the cinematography of Midsommar, Us, and The Lighthouse, Climax impressed me more than those films did. So that's going to be mine, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's a really respectable choice.
Lighthouse.
All three of those choices.
The black and white
yeah.
is so like
And
it's like
I love-
choosing. It's a Sophie's choice. Like which one you.
I know I said it during the podcast too, but like when it comes to the aspect ratio, the more time I've had to think on it, the more I stand by.
I've definitely come around on it in terms of The Lighthouse. I'm still unsure about The Nightingale, but I think that the aspect ratio for The Lighthouse, like I'm on board.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get there, but I'm on board.
Okay, so rounding it off, best performances.
Fuck, also extremely
This one's
hard.
tough too, yeah. I don't want to just keep singing the praises of The Lighthouse, even though it deserves it. because
I'm just gonna
especially
continually ditto you.
Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are fantastic. Even though those are great, I'm going to give it to Samara Weaving in
Oh,
Ready or
nice.
Not.
Okay.
I think she gives such a standout performance in that movie and is really the lifeblood of that film.
When it comes to like just action heroes, I'm putting her like on Bruce Campbell level. She's so damn likable. It's great. Yeah, no, she's
Bruce
she's
Campbell's
lovely.
actually a great comparison. She's less over the top than he is in Evil Dead, but
Right. But he's got
the
that
same,
bitter, like resentful,
Yeah.
like kind of thing going for it, and it's just so often
and wisecracking and fun and very, very likable.
right.
Yeah.
And it's what saved that film from just being like a battery porn movie, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Like she's so charismatic. Like yeah,
She's delightful.
I don't know if it like tops out like the Lighthouse performances for me, or even I know a lot of people have qualms with the performance for what's her name in Midsummer.
The main character,
Danny, yeah, with,
Florence Pugh's performance.
Yeah, with Florence's performance.
I actually
but
really like her performance.
I'm holding it up there with the rest. I think it's incredibly real. It struck me.
Yeah, well, in terms of Midsummer, they did really believable performances especially when they're like tripping. Like I think that film
They did their homework.
is known to. I mean, clearly, but I think that film is kind of prone to misrepresent what people are like on drugs. Like famously, they almost never get what like being stoned on pot is like. But I think that in Midsummer they did a really great job of characterizing people who are under the effect of hallucinogenics. Also, can't argue with The Lighthouse. Like those are two powerhouse performances. But what I'm going to say for my favorite, I'm going to say Lupita Nyong'o for Us.
Yeah.
Because she plays two distinctly different characters, a lot of which are in the same scene. So being able to like convincingly portray both of those and be able to work off of each other, it's really impressive. I think she gives my standout performance of the year.
When it comes to the greatest challenges to overcome, and I think the greatest feats, it's pretty objectively her. Lupita Nyong'o just really did like show up. For
I
that.
agree.
And that I think that is like one of the greatest challenges.
Yeah, it's
to have.
such
That
a
is both
physical
characters.
performance that
She's
it's really
magnetic.
excellent. The one minor thing about that is over the time since we recorded that episode, I will say the weird voice.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's
The
sticks with me.
doppelganger.
Because she's had her windpipe crushed because the doppelganger chokes her at the beginning when she's a child, so she's speaking through a damaged windpipe. It works for me.
Yeah,
it stuck out.
I'm on board with it.
I want to ask you guys, and I'm still trying to figure out what mine is, but it came to me. Special effects. What's your favorite? Moment of like of just of an effect sequence, whether it's practical or CG?
I'm gonna say Midsummer, talking about like the hallucinogenic sequences and the realism behind that. Like the way that they portray like hallucinogenic visuals is very on point. To the extent that at certain times I feel like I'm tripping while watching the movie, and I think that to just add to that immersion, it's a great use of CG, subtly but believably.
Yeah, sure. It's Midsummer for me as well. I think when it comes to the faces in the trees that I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
For like after 2 viewings.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. And I agree with you guys. I do also want to shout out a particular scene in Ready or Not that I'm not going to spoil.
The end. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Those are great effects. Yeah.
As well as the head in Child's Play.
Oh,
and
yeah.
how it's used so much.
Yeah. No, that is really
They get their
fun.
mileage out of that prop, to say the least.
Agreed. All right, now it's time for the negs. It's time for the 5 worst films of 2019.
Do you want to go in the same order or switch it up?
Let's switch it up. Let's start with you this time, Cleveland.
Cool. I think that's reasonable only because I think I was probably the most offended maybe by some of the movies this year. Could be wrong.
I was pretty
Looking
offended
back-
by some of these.
Yeah, like looking back, I just remember like how angry I was at a couple of these films. But it's always hard to tell because it's kind of hard to self-reflect. But
What is your 5th worst film of the year?
so one of the reasons I wanted to include my top 10 is because oddly enough, one of my top 10 picks for best also goes into the worst at number 5, and that's Dr. Sleep. Like I said, the moments I liked, I liked a lot.
You did watch fewer films than Ben and I did this year. That's true.
That is true, and I'm sure that has a large effect on that scoring, and I'll give you that. Discount Jack Nicholson is an affront, and again, I'll still say shout out to Mike Flanagan. I loved a great deal of that movie, but that's unacceptable. It really, really bothered me and has continued to bother me that they thought that was okay to do, and that made a passing grade.
That's pretty funny that Dr. Sleep made it into your best and worst of the year.
It's number 10 on best, and it's number 5 on worst. So,
okay. All right, Ben, what's your 5th worst film of the year?
Okay, so I do want to preface this by saying about half of my list are movies we didn't talk about on the podcast.
Good, bring
I've
fresh
seen
perspective.
a whole
Nice.
lot of movies this year.
All 5 of mine are ones we talked about on
And
the podcast.
unfortunately, some of the movies I saw this year were so bad that they upset me, and I didn't want to cover them on the podcast.
Oh, boy.
My 5th worst movie is actually a tie. The reason I have it as a tie, I'll explain, is I had Wrinkles the Clown.
Damn, I wanted to see that movie.
Which is a documentary on kind of the clown craze and an old man who is a scary clown. The thing is, it's not really a horror movie. It's not really a documentary with anything to say. And is
it like a faux documentary? I thought it was like
it's a real documentary.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And
Interesting.
it's not good. It's not good at
More
all.
like Ronkles the Clown.
It's a waste of time. But since it's not really a horror movie, I decided to also put in The Perfection.
Oh my God, how did I... what have I done?
The Perfection
my
was
list.
an absolute train wreck.
Okay, you know what? No, credit to Dr. Sleep. I'm replacing my number 5 with The Perfection. But how did I just utter brain fart on that one? Dr. Sleep, you're fine. Compared to the affront that was The Perfection, no, my whole list is fucked now.
What a disjointed mess.
What a disgrace,
What
frankly.
a misguided attempt at woke boss feminism.
Love me some feminism. Hate me that movie. That shit's propaganda, man.
Annihilation
Like, oh, God.
is feminism.
Yeah,
Well,
The Perfection
like I
is
said,
not.
It's
No.
a misguided attempt
Yeah.
at it because in the third act, and you can listen to our mid-year catch-up for more of this.
I suggest you do.
They do not do those ideas correctly.
Man, they don't even do. It doesn't
it
stop
is a
there.
nightmare.
They make an attempt at making a film, as far as I'm concerned, and I give a big old side eye to anyone who is praising that movie,
It's about 3 different movies in one.
Yeah.
and none of them hit the mark.
Exactly. So that's my number 5. Wrinkles the Clown is technically tied, but I don't know if you want to consider it a horror movie. I certainly don't.
Just sort of a mix up there, a wrinkle and clown, if you will.
Yes.
All right, my number 5 is Pilgrim. Like I said on our episode about Pilgrim, it was fun to watch it with you guys. It was a good little Thanksgiving gag, but man, the fisheye lens is so bad to look at. And ultimately, I didn't think any of the stuff was fun enough for me to want to go back to it. So, Pilgrim is my 5th worst film of the year. Pilgrim.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne.
What's number 4 for you, Cleve?
By the way, Mr. Wayne, your views are outdated, and you need to get off this podcast.
Have I been canceled, Pilgrim?
I'm not going to be that person to say that, but I don't want to be put in that position.
I mean, I will cancel Pilgrims for killing all the Native Americans.
That's very easy to say. That's not.
but
that
will
one's
you
not
cancel
hard.
John Wayne 40 years after his death?
Yeah, it seems like a futile thing, but
Anyway, Cleveland.
sorry for that. My number 4 is surprisingly, considering my views on it, and I kind of defended it on the podcast a little bit. I'm still putting it number 4 is Pet Sematary. which I'm
Okay.
probably seeing might be on y'all's lists as well.
Not mine. No, Pet Cemetery
The-
is like mid tier for me.
The nihilistic ending, the more I think about it, the more it bothered me, even though I was the one who wasn't bothered by it on the podcast when we spoke about it so much and kind of defended it for its merits leading up to that sequence and its changes. No, it's a drab, dreary film, and the ending is gross.
Yeah.
It's not good, and it's problematic, and it does a number of things right, once again, that I can give credit to, but I would say the perfection is far, far worse, and there are probably several others. My list can be rearranged, but I think Pet Sematary is worth mentioning.
It's a good choice, and it's a choice that would be on my list if I only had movies we covered on the podcast, frankly.
Even so, it's still mid tier for me. Didn't think it was great. I thought Pet Cemetery was okay. So, but what's your number 4?
My
Ben?
number 4 is a little movie called Hellboy.
Mine too. My
Okay,
number 4
good.
is also Hellboy.
Because what a train wreck.
That's an understatement. Oh my god.
Talk about putting a franchise in the dirt.
Yeah, that's a thermonuclear train wreck, is what that is. Good lord.
And like the more I think about it, the more it pisses me off because they could have done the conclusion to Guillermo del Toro's trilogy that we're now never going to see.
Well, and the most baffling part about it to me
And
is
that Hellboy's directed by Neil Marshall.
yeah, it has a good director. It has a good cast. The pieces didn't add up.
Yeah, I love David Harbour, and I think he's a great actor, and I don't think he's one of the problems with the movie. But yeah, I think that considering the budget that it had, it could have done so many better things, and instead it tried to just do as many CG sequences as it could pack in there, and they're all rough across the board.
Well, I mentioned
it's higher up on my list.
I mentioned
I'll go ahead
on
and get into
our
it now.
episode, like it feels like a whole omnibus of comic books shoved into one movie.
It is.
Where, it's way too much.
Too much is going on. Like they don't give you enough time. They're just trying to cram in as many set pieces as possible, and they don't feel like they fit together at all. It's like a 4-year-old who doesn't quite get the concept of puzzles and is just trying to force the pieces together. And when you look at what he's done, it's not a picture.
No, it's as Bilbo Baggins once wonderfully said, like warm butter over too much bread.
It's fucking trash.
Well,
it's my number 4 as well.
I always think back
it's
to
higher up on mine.
that sequence in the middle with the big monsters, and how like in a normal movie that would be like half an hour probably.
Yeah.
And this movie it's like 2.5 minutes maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They cut to it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, Cleveland, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is The Pilgrim. That's where it's going for
Oh,
me.
okay.
It literally gave me a migraine. I don't need to say anymore.
That's funny. You rated Pilgrim higher than I did, but you put it lower on your worst of the year list than mine. Mm-hmm. I like that.
It's funny how that goes,
Yeah. No, Pilgrim's a
Wait to
mess.
see my decade list.
Number 3 for me is a movie called Greta.
Oh, I forgot about Greta too. Good Lord, Ben. Yeah, you're just reminding me of all
Yeah.
these things that I just deleted from my memory. Like,
Probably for the best.
man,
That's why you should have a letterbox.
I'll let you say your bit about Greta, but Greta.
It is kind of an enjoyable train wreck at times. For the majority of it, no. It is nearing so bad it's good levels, but it is a fever dream to say the least.
In a bad way.
Isabelle Huppert gives a completely batshit performance.
That
and-
shit in a bad way.
There's
in a
no
bad way,
logic.
yeah.
It tries to be like a detective thriller, but there's no chain.
And especially in the third act, it goes places and not good places. It's number 3 on my list.
I'll add in on that since it's on my list too. I don't even remember and don't care to remember whether we saw that in the theaters or whether we streamed it. But regardless,
That was our catch up. That was in our catch up.
Regardless, I want my money back.
Yeah, thank God we didn't go see it.
Yeah,
in the theaters.
I'm okay. Good. I'm glad I didn't pay money to see that film.
Okay, so my number 3 is Glass. One of our first films of the year. A fucking trash film, especially in regards to the legacy of Unbreakable and Split, 2 films that I enjoy both of for different reasons. The whole idea of trying to bring them together into one is just such a fucking mess. it gets fun in like the last 30 minutes, but at that point you've already sat through an hour and a half of the movie, and everything up to that is completely incomprehensible. So yeah, it's definitely like Glass fucking sucked. Cleveland, what's your number 2?
That was Hellboy. That's where Hellboy goes for me.
Wow, number 2, yeah.
Tease, you brought it up one time to me that you've noticed that the films that tend to rub me the wrong way are usually the ones that are the least faithful to their source material, when they don't bring a good voice to that adaptation. I think that you can make a film that is not faithful to its source material, that does bring its own voice and is still of high regard, but when you don't, you're just insulting.
Yeah,
you're
totally.
just insulting like something greater that's come before you, and that's no good. Hellboy's pretty high up on my list for that. But man, I'll say it again, the perfection was rough. Man.
Yes, it was.
Ben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a movie we didn't talk about on the podcast, thankfully. A movie in the classic subgenre of boomer technology horror.
Oh,
that
boy.
we've gotten multiple of.
Boy.
See our second episode for more of that with Friend Request, for example.
Yeah.
This movie falls in that camp 100%. In a lot of ways, it feels like the spiritual successor to Friend Request. In a lot of the bad ways, it's a movie called Countdown. Countdown, for all of you that aren't familiar with it, is about an app that tells you how long you have left to live.
Oh, that one.
Yep.
I almost went to see it with you in the theater, but I was busy, and I'm glad I didn't.
I have A-list, AMC A-list, so I didn't have to pay for it, thankfully. Otherwise, I would never have gone to see this. But I went to see it in the theaters a few weeks back, and it is not good. I'm going to spoil a little bit here. The source code of the app is written in Latin because I guess
Latin is spooky.
Latin is spooky, and
Satan made the app,
Satan
right?
made the app, essentially. Well, Super Satan, because if you break the terms and conditions, your fate is no longer sealed by Satan, but Super Satan. I can't remember the Latin name for it, but it's really stupid.
It's Super AIDS all over again.
I want to emphasize that in the climax of this movie, our lead injects herself with a bunch of heroin to make herself OD and die, and then has another character inject her with Narcan to bring her back to life.
So she Pulp Fictions herself.
Yeah, essentially.
Awesome.
She cheats death.
Does it break the app because she does that?
Essentially, the idea was...
When she's dead, does she battle Satan
No.
in a CG sequence?
No, not quite.
Oh,
It's
bummer.
not that. It's not that inventive. The idea is if you die before or after it, I guess it breaks the app. It no longer works for everyone.
Great.
So she was trying to murder this dude who was really rapey to her at work for a while, and then that didn't work. So she just shot herself up with a bunch of heroin. But of course, nothing matters because at the very end of the movie, she's walking away from her parents' grave and looks at her phone, and guess what? Countdown 2.0 is on her phone. There's gotta be sequel material. It's a fucking train wreck. It's on the same level as Friend Request in terms of like boomers writing for teenagers and also not understanding technology.
I gotta say, like, missing a date is like a mild inconvenience. It shouldn't be like what thwarts the enemy. Thwarts the antagonistic app.
Missing
it's like a Y2K,
missing the
like-
time, yeah.
Like logic kind of thing.
It's-
That's hilarious.
It sounds like trash.
It's a train wreck, and
I'm glad I didn't see
we
it.
spared ourselves. Honestly, I was nearing picking this for the wrap up before I saw it. So I'm glad I saw it
Thank you.
before that because we dodged a fucking bullet.
Thank you for sparing us from that. My number 2 is The Perfection. I've said many times on this podcast, the films that make me the most frustrated are the ones that have the biggest potential. And I think like the first act of The Perfection is genuinely well done, intriguing.
The premise is rad.
Yeah, like it wraps you up and starts to engross you and then just takes you into the garage, holds you down and shits in your mouth. And I fucking hated that movie. It's absolute dog shit. I won't say any more about that. Cleveland, what is the worst film of 2019 in your opinion?
I think you know. I think you know what my pick is. I didn't have to think about this at all. No contest for me. Glass.
I knew it, yeah.
Was thrown into a bitter rage. And I disagree about the third act. I think the third act is the largest affront. There's been several pieces of media that have come out since we saw Glass that have provided legitimate commentary on the superhero franchise. For instance, The Boys.
Yeah.
Other stuff. We've also seen several other works that do a horrible job of providing commentary on the franchise, such as HBO's Watchmen, which we do not have the time to unpack, nor is it relevant. But this film is so far up its own ass, and to have your climax be in a parking lot where it just provides poor commentary on the comic book genre by having the characters literally narrate, this is where the bad guy does X, is so ham-fistedly, amateuristically written that it just goes to further provide evidence for me that M. Night Shyamalan, when he's good, it's out of luck. Like, I just, like, the Avatar movie, there are just so many affronts.
Yeah, he got lucky with The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. That's about it.
Like,
Signs in the Village are okay.
Like, it's extremely rough, and I love all the actors involved in this film. I think Unbreakable is still a great movie. I feel like James McAvoy's performance in Split is great, but the film itself, I'm honestly not a huge fan of. The more I think about it, just kind of the more it kind of leaves me feeling neutral or nothing. But Glass, it has no logic. Its commentary is really non-existent. Like, what is it trying to say about superheroes films? And I agree with the sentiment. I'm completely exhausted by these superhero movies, and I grew up on them. I love them, and I'm tired of it, frankly. I'm an adult man. I'm over it. Like, I'm over superhero films.
Yeah, dog. Go off, King.
So, again, I agree with the premise, but anytime I think about this movie, I just see red. It drives me up the goddamn wall. Okay, well, that's enough from me.
What's your worst film?
I don't hate Glass quite as much as you guys. I still don't think it's very good, and it's probably in my bottom 10. I like the last half an hour. I think Bruce Willis actually gives his best performance in almost a decade, just because he's checked out otherwise in every other movie.
Sure.
Yeah,
and the production design is pretty solid as well. My number one is a movie we didn't cover on the podcast. Okay, so I want to preface this. A new Tarantino movie came out this year.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is an excellent film on the 60s Hollywood and some of the Manson stuff. So after seeing that movie, I did see that there were a couple other Manson-themed movies coming out this year. On a whim, I decide to watch The Haunting of Sharon Tate.
I remember you telling me about this one.
Boy, was that a mistake. Lizzie McGuire's own Hilary Duff playing Sharon Tate. And it becomes a dream inside of a dream ghost story of the Tate murders with actors that look like they're ripped straight out of reality TV, like Vanderpump Rules, essentially. It is a disgusting, offensive, awful movie.
I was going to say, it sounds offensive to the memory of Sharon Tate.
It is. It's absolutely offensive. It's really exploitative. It's honestly one of the few movies this year that have really upset me watching them. It's one of the worst horror movies of the decade. I really hate it, and I can't even recommend seeing it. You know, at least movies like The Perfection or Greta or even Glass, there's something you can laugh at in them. This movie has nothing. I would not recommend anyone to see it. It's really awful.
Less dramatic, maybe, but my least favorite film of 2019 was Greta. Hands down, worst movie I saw this year. Once again, insulting because the actors involved are people that I like. Isabelle Huppert is a fantastic actress. I think Chloe Grace Moritz is decent, and Micah Monroe is great. All great actresses, and the script of this film is an affront to their acting ability. Isabelle Huppert is cartoonish in this movie, something that I never thought I would see from her, and it's just a complete train wreck of a film.
It's a great example too of a film that is not entertainingly bad. It's just boring and obnoxious.
I started to be entertained towards the end, but once again, it's too little too late. Like, I wouldn't sit through the rest of the movie for like the 10 minutes of laughs I got at the end. It's just a bad movie.
Fun fact, the two most contentious reviews compared to Letterboxd ratings are two of our worst movies.
Oh, really?
Greta actually has like a 2.9 on Letterboxd.
Please tell me the other one's the perfection.
And we each gave it a 1 star.
Yeah.
And the other one's Glass.
Oh, okay, word.
Which I think got about a 2.9 or a 3.
Good.
The Perfection
honestly.
also has a 2.9. I just pulled it up. So
does
it's
it?
The same with
my
Greta.
faith in society
but
is
compared to
I would say
our
redeemed, but-
ratings
Yeah.
at the time, it's the most drastically different
Yeah.
from the Letterboxd rating.
Well, those are the worst films of 2019, and that puts 2019 in the grave. Rest in peace, bitch. You were a good year,
Well,
but also a bad year. Now, moving on to our next segment, we are going to talk about our picks for best horror films of the decade. On this episode, we'll be covering our 10 through 6 choices, and next week we'll do 5 through 1.
So there's a whole lot to talk about. I'm going to try to keep my picks brief. I do want to preface with at least my list. I didn't expect you guys to do this, but I wanted to give a little bit of extra variety to my list. So I put the limitation of 1 movie per director. Just an arbitrary thing
Yeah, I
for
didn't
my
do
list.
that.
I respect that
Gives
idea.
it a little bit more variety.
I have 2 directors with 2 films on my
Yeah, I
list.
was
might also-
worried that I would have like 4 or 5 directors with 2 films each.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want that.
Well, why don't you start then?
Sure. So at number 10 was a little movie that came out in 2016, directed by Fede Alvarez. It's a movie called Don't Breathe. This is a movie that really surprised me. I wasn't expecting much going in. Little did I know that it was going to be one of the most tense experiences I've ever seen, one of the best uses of sound design I've ever seen. The movie is delightfully sleazy, especially in the second half of it.
It's really gross.
And
yeah.
the whole environment of having it all set in Detroit adds to the atmosphere in such a rich way. The acting is also incredible. It's just an incredible movie. It's a movie we haven't talked about yet on the podcast, but I hope to change that this
I agree.
upcoming year.
I would also really like to
because
talk about Don't Breathe.
it's worth
Yeah.
another look. It's really a great movie.
I ended up having 12 films that I saw this decade that I rated 5 stars, 12 horror films. So my top 10 are all 5-star rated films, and I had to cut out 2 of those, and I'll talk about that when we get into honorable mentions. But my 10th favorite film of the decade is Us. I won't rehash too much. We've already talked about it ad nauseum. Jordan Peele is a filmmaker who makes fucking bangers. So
And you've got 5 on it.
yeah, I got 5 on it. So yeah, Us is my number 10. Fucking fantastic film. Cleve.
Right. So my list was just a continuous mess. I kept moving stuff around, throwing things on there that y'all might even find like reprehensible wherever on my list at all. They're still in my honorable mentions. I spent far more time on this list than I did on my yearly picks, and I'm way less confident in it. Likely several times during this, y'all will give something, I'll be like, oh my god, how did I not put that on there? Like, I'm already seeing that happening.
Okay.
But my number 10, surprisingly, like out of like several other highly rated choices, is Hush.
Also a great film.
So once again, shout out to Mike Flanagan. I adore that movie. You know, a lot of people feel somewhat neutral about it, but when it comes to Hunter Killer, movies. I haven't seen Don't Breathe, but similar vein of film with a deaf protagonist who's actually well written and believable. The film's logic is just so on point. You can track the entire movie. It's a delightful cat and mouse game. The protagonist feels believably able. Whenever she outsmarts the killer, it feels so fucking earned. I really respect this movie. Yeah, the puzzle solving is great, and so Hush is a strong.
It's a great
10.
choice, and Mike Flanagan has had so many great movies.
Yeah.
Even in this decade, you know.
Hush is probably my favorite film that he's done.
Yeah, and I think if I were to pick one, it would probably be Hush. Probably with Oculus as a close second.
I like Oculus and Gerald's Game as well. But
I do
Hush
also
is elevated. I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Doing so much with so little.
I do also want to give a shout out to Fede Alvarez with Evil Dead. I think I'm going to do that with some of these directors because I picked only one of their films.
Sure.
Multiple of their films are worth a mention. But there's only going to be one per. So my number 9 is a little movie called The Guest. Now, The Guest is an excellent bit of action horror. Really takes you by surprise. Dan Stevens as the titular main character gives an incredible performance. All of the character actor bit parts from people like Lance Reddick are really unique and fun. The script by Simon Barrett is excellent. Adam Wingard hits it out of the park. It has one of my favorite soundtracks of any movie. Really excellent stuff.
Who did it?
It's a collection of like EBM and goth electronic.
I know Survive did a few
the
tracks
90s.
for The Guest as well.
Yeah, Adam Wingard, he's a great director. I almost put You're Next on this list, but personally, I think I prefer The Guest.
Between the two of them, I think I agree with you. The Guest is a really great film.
It's a shame that Adam Wingard has not been on the best streak lately with the Death Note movie and the new Blair Witch. But, you know, movies like You're Next and The Guest make me hopeful for a future with whatever he does.
No, I agree. The Guest is a good choice. That's a fucking great film. My number 9 is a 2011 film by Drew Goddard, Cabin in the Woods.
Excellent.
That made my honorable mentions by high on my honorable mentions.
Cabin that's one that we haven't talked about on the podcast yet, and I also hope to change in the next year. Cabin in the Woods is a fucking fantastic film. It's extremely meta. It is a love letter to the horror genre as well as an examination of the tropes and a satirization of the tropes as well. Just a really fantastic, fun movie. Does a really good job of balancing more kind of graphic horror with just really sharp, witty writing and dialogue. Cabin in the Woods, it's almost 10 years old at this point. If you still haven't seen it, I couldn't recommend it more, especially if you're a fan of horror. Just like the references and homages are just so on point and delightful.
It was really a watershed moment when it came out too.
Totally.
I feel like that movie in particular crossed over beyond horror fans to really saturate the mainstream.
Yeah.
In a way few horror movies do. I think one of the few great examples of that would be like Get Out or something like that.
A bit of an aside, but I feel like it's relevant. In my honorable mentions, one of the ones that for a good while was on my list that even usurped Cabin in the Woods for me. It's a very similar kind of like comedic dark take on the horror genre was Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
That's a great movie.
I just adore that movie, and when it comes to moments like the accidental wood chipper bit still makes me giggle every time I think about it. But my number 9 is, and one of the reasons too I wanted to kind of talk about Tucker and Dale instead, because my number 9 is one from this year with Ready or Not,
which also fits in that same camp.
Exactly. Yeah. You know? I love that dark comedy take, and so I just figured to take a moment to talk about Tucker and Dale instead. I love Alan Tudyk, and it's one of my favorite performances of his, and it does a great job of subverting the killer genre.
It's absolutely worth a mention. My number 8 is a movie called Piranha. Piranha is a blast. It's one of the perfect examples of grindhouse B-movie movies done in a more modern style. It's really colorful, really fun. I have a blast every time I watch it.
Piranha was actually one of my 12 5-star rated films that I had to edge out of my top 10. That one definitely deserves an honorable mention. Go back and listen to our episode on Piranha 3D. That's a fucking fantastic, fun film.
It's another one I'm still yet to see.
My number 8 is The Babadook from 2014 by Jennifer Kent. We just recently talked about The Nightingale, and we also have an episode on The Babadook. Really original, moody, atmospheric Australian horror. Great performances, very good writing, what the monster represents and how the protagonist deals with it is very poignant, and the way that they conclude it all too, with her just locking the monster in the basement and just she knows she has to live with it forever, but she's gonna fucking deal with it day by day. Definitely one of the best of the decade.
My number 8 is The Blackcoat's Daughter.
Nice.
That's where it's going for me. Every time I think about the kowtowing, my stomach drops. If you want to go with literally your gut, that's what brings it onto the list. Blackcoat's Daughter is just a chilling performance. It's like an anti-Shining film. Like it's that like gripping madness with such a different satanic perspective, and I adore that movie.
We'll see if Oz Perkins can keep it up in the next decade with Gretel and Hansel.
Yeah, one of our first
in
films
January.
for 2020.
Okay, so number 7, I won't repeat myself too much. This is a 2019 movie. Climax goes up here on my list.
Wow. God, I've got to see this film.
It is unbelievably immersive, really a standout movie. It took me a while to make this list, but that movie in particular was so immersive and atmospheric that I couldn't keep it off of my list. It had to be on there. It's an excellent movie. Listen to the Climax episode if you want more on that.
It's funny, both of y'all's last picks, The Blackcoat's Daughter and Climax, did end up on my honorable mentions list because they're both very, very good films. My number 7 is Get Out from 2017 by Jordan Peele, the second Jordan Peele film on my best of the decade list. I mean, we've talked about Get Out. We have an episode on Get Out. If Jordan Peele is not on your radar at this point, he absolutely should be. Like, there was never any question that both of his films would end up on my best of the decade list. And Get Out is one that I've just grown to appreciate more and more the number of times I watch it. Great performances, funny, meaningful, and spooky too. So fuck yeah, Get Out.
One of the interesting things about the decade for me is, while you guys went to film school and spent a great deal of time studying cinema and keeping relevant with cinema this past decade. To phrase it differently, while I was out drinking, you guys were studying The Blade. But my list from here on out, from 7 to 1, is a mess only in that I can exchange any of these out from 7 to 1,
sure.
And it's all over the place.
If anything, that's
they're all
props to the quality of films.
Right, like at 7, like it surprises me, like when I went back to look at the list, that it's at 7, that it's not at number 1. And that's It Follows. It Follows is a masterpiece. The tall man entering the room. Again, you want to talk about stomach drops. This film is littered with them. Masterclass once again with doing so much with so little. Considering the budget for that movie, I can't help but stand up and just applaud it.
Well, at number 6, like I said at the beginning, I picked one movie per director, and so my Jordan Peele pick was Get Out. While I love Us, I feel like Get Out was more of a watershed moment in horror in terms of pop culture saturation. So I think it's more of an important cultural milestone in terms of film. While I may prefer Us a little bit, I think Get Out is definitely worthy of that spot. It's a great movie with a great sense of humor, and it's one that stands up and will hopefully stand the test of time.
My number 6 is a film from last year. It is Annihilation by Alex Garland. This is a movie that I had some gripes with on a first viewing that pretty much all of those have gone out the window in subsequent viewings. You can go back and listen to our episode on it to see what I'm talking about, but just a testament to this film is, like, a couple of months ago, I was trying to find a movie to watch, and I spent like 30 minutes scrolling through Netflix and Hulu, being like, okay, what am I going to watch? Oh, this looks good. Maybe I'll watch this one. And by the end of it, I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to rewatch Annihilation for the 6th time. And the fact that I have been so drawn back to that film easily puts it in my top 10.
Number 6, once again, surprised it's so low on my list. This is also where my best of the decade list conflicts with my best of the year list, and y'all just figure it out. I think it's a nice opportunity to rank them differently, just to show how they're all fucking great, and it's apples and oranges at the end of the day. Sure. So I don't feel bad that my lists conflict. Is Midsommar, the gas mask and the leap. Those sequences are the ultimate gut drops. They still, like, give me, like, fake PTSD. Like, they're out of this world. That whole movie is one of the best takes on psychedelia, and we've already talked about it.
I do, just looking at my list now, I do think it's worth mentioning that 7 of my 10 films are post 2015.
Almost all of mine.
I think that really shows, like, what a stride the horror genre hit in 2016 onward. We'll talk more about that next week when we do our top 5 of the decade, but you'll just have to wait. That'll be our first episode of 2020. Will be our wrap-up of the best films of the decade, and we will also be doing our predictions for the films of 2020, and Ben will be giving us the films that we're going to catch up on.
I'm going to assign you some films. I'm being a little merciful. I have some picks that will hopefully be good, so we'll see.
I'm hopeful. At least I hope that you're kind to us. But until then, if you like the show, please go on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and review, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast that allows you to rate. Do the ding dang thing. Follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod or at letterboxd.com/PodPeoplePod to look at all these lists. We made all these lists for you, so you can look at them more closely over there and see our golden pods as well. You can find me on Twitter at Deep State Ozzy.
And I'm at Mr. Sheets.
And just to clarify, that's Deep State Ozymandias is the gag, right?
Yeah.
Just so our viewers understand that you're not a Deep State Ozzy Osbourne fan. That would
No. I am.
To be clear, it's commentary. Folks.
I am the Deep State Ozymandias, controlling everything from behind the scenes, teleporting interdimensional aliens into our world and getting Robert Redford elected president. All of these things and much more are at my fingertips. But where can they find you, Cleveland?
They can find me on Twitter, tweeting for Light Arc Studio from time to time, but most importantly, you can find me directing It Stares Back, our lovely, lovely horror indie strategy game. Can you dig it? Go check it out. Go online, check out It Stares Back on Steam for a wonderful, worthy price of only $6. I think we're coming up on doing a sale pretty soon, too. And then we'll be coming up on releasing some more content over the next few months. Go check it out. You heard the word.
Join our Discord as well. You can find the link to that at Light Arc Studio if you so choose. All right, well, that will bring this episode to an end. Stay tuned next week for the conclusion of Best of the Decade on the Pod People.
I am a quiver with anticipation.
And who knows what 2020 will bring? We will find out after this. Ooh.